The rental was a dump. Not only was the soundproofing non-existent and the paint peeling, but the room was stiflingly hot with no AC. The window frames were so warped that opening them caused the kitchen door to groan like a dying man. But if you kept them closed, you'd suffocate. Summer Lynn lay awake, listening to the symphony of the house's decay, trying not to disturb the soft snoring coming from Leo beside her. So she just stared at the ceiling, her mind a swirl of chaotic thoughts, like how maybe getting married here wouldn't be so bad. She knew if she ever voiced that thought to her agent, Laura, she'd be laughed out of the room. Because she already had been. Back when they were still on friendly terms, she'd shared stories about her and Leo, her voice full of a naive pride. He was, after all, the only thing in her life she felt was truly worth showing off. Laura had listened, offered a brief, patronizing comment about the beauty of true love, and then asked the one question that sliced right through the fantasy. Have you ever thought about what you'll do after you make it? Once I have money, we'll buy a house and get married. That's it? That's your only dream? Nothing bigger? No. You chose to become a trainee. Surely you've imagined yourself on a massive stage, a superstar, shining under the lights. It'd be a lie to say I haven't, Summer had admitted. But what does that have to do with getting married? Don't stars get married? They can, but it affects your career. I don't care. I can earn a little less. How much is enough, anyway? But you have so much potential, Laura had said, her face a mask of disappointment. She was the quintessential power woman, the kind who loved nothing more than to lecture naive young girls on the gospel of success. Summer, your entire life revolves around your boyfriend. You're living as an object, dependent on someone else for your existence. Laura, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm tired. I've been around the block, kid. You always have to be the main character in your own story. The way you're living is just wrong. That phrase, wrong way to live, snagged on nerve. Summer had stood her ground, looking her agent dead in the eye. Laura, I know you mean well, but there's nothing wrong with my life. What's so great about being dependent on someone else? And being a career woman means you never have to feel sad, never have regrets or heartbreak. That shut Laura up. She tried to form a rebuttal, but the words wouldn't come. I think different lifestyles just mean you experience different kinds of happiness and different kinds of pain, Summer continued, her voice soft but firm. I want to build a little family with the man I love. You want to be an independent boss and make a fortune. Neither is wrong. Who's to say which one is better or worse in the end? Laura looked stunned. Summer, I never thought you had it in you to say something like that. My boyfriend taught me. I just adapted it a little. What was the original? I can't say. Why not? He told me to always be sweet to my bosses. Or at least, not to insult them. It's fine, Laura said, leaning in. Just between us. Girl talk. Summer took a breath. His original words were, anyone who stands on a mountain and dictates how other people should live their lives is just broadcasting their own ignorant arrogance. The memory dissolved. Summer rolled over, rubbing her head against the lumpy pillow. Sleep was a million miles away. Can't sleep? Or just not used to the bed? The familiar voice in the dark made her jump. Did I wake you? She whispered. You did. Now, get over here and be my pillow. Oh, okay. She shuffled closer, and Leo rolled toward her, pulling her into his arms. It was comfortable. Safe. What were you thinking about? He murmured in her hair. Plotting the downfall of some great enemy? Or dreaming about the good life after you make it big? Are you a mind reader? You're the type. All quiet and meek on the outside, but with the richest inner world. Always fantasizing about some dramatic plot. I was fantasizing that one day we could get married. Leo, do you not want to get married? Of course I do, he said, without a trace of hesitation. It sounded as natural as breathing. If I didn't want to marry you, what am I doing holding you like this? I'm not a scumbag. Summer turned to face him, their noses almost touching. Leo, forget about responsibility and all that. Just for a second, be completely selfish. Think only about yourself. I can't. Because I can't forget about it. He sighed, the warmth of his breath on her face. He was fully awake now. He stretched and leaned back against the headboard. Stop overthinking. I got a new job out of this whole mess. You're going back to your training. Everything's going to be okay. Yeah, she whispered, a sudden wave of optimism washing over her. Everything's going to be okay. She looked at him, a new thought occurring to her. I never asked. What's a new job? I'm a host. A host? Like for a TV show? Let me try a more down-to-earth term. A male model. A model. Hey, you'd actually be great at that. She squeezed his shoulder. Just looking at that handsome face made it impossible to stay mad at him for long. Okay, let me try one more, even more down-to-earth term, he said, his voice level. A male escort. Summer's smile froze. Don't joke about that, Leo. Escorts are. You're obviously kidding, right? Her voice grew smaller and smaller until it was just a whisper, then silence. It had never occurred to her that Leo's job was selling himself. She knew things like that existed. She'd heard the other girls in the trainee dorms talk. Girls with stunning looks, but empty bank accounts who somehow always had the latest luxury handbags. Summer had picked up on the whispers. In that kind of environment, it was hard not to be influenced, especially since her background was nearly identical to theirs. The only thing that had kept her from falling into that world was him. Leo had been her anchor, the person who helped her define her own version of happiness long ago. But this she couldn't accept. Leo, can you not do that? The thought of you. Thinking what? I'm not selling my body. That's illegal. Then what are you selling? Whatever makes the client happy. Whatever makes the client happy. Summer tilted her head, studying his profile in the dim light. If the clients were women, Leo definitely had the ability to deliver. But they'll fall in love with you. Can't be helped. It's the fastest way to make money. You're going to need a lot of it to become a star. Summer let out a long, defeated sigh, her gaze returning to the cracked ceiling. For people like them, life offered very few choices. When faced with an impossible decision, you realize just how agonizing choosing can be. Human nature is too complex. You hear stories about prostitutes who sell their bodies to support their boyfriends and think they must be anomalies, only to realize there are thousands of them. How do you judge them? Is it pure love or a twisted form of betrayal? It's neither. The hardships of life breed a million bizarre situations that defy easy judgment. Like this one. 2 kids from 2 broken homes, penniless, living on credit cards. And in front of them, an opportunity, a chance to change everything, to step into a bigger world. At the very least, a chance to leave this rattling, drafty apartment behind. There were no other options. Take it or stay here. Go to college and graduate right back into the same apartment? For most people their age, this was already a stroke of luck. How many people get a chance to work in a high-end lounge or become a famous singer? But it came at a price. Summer needed time to grow, and that growth required a mountain of cash. That was her price. The upside was that after she made it, Leo could retire for life. Leo could make that cash, and quickly. But his price was facing an endless parade of women. The upside was that it would support Summer's career. The consequences of his choice were a ticking time bomb. Until it went off, neither of them could know how devastating the fallout would be. Years later, when Summer finally stood on that glittering stage, she would feel a pang of regret. Regret for not choosing to stay in that tiny apartment that day. Because while they had both, by some miracle, achieved their goals, they had lost each other in the process. But if you posed that question to her 19-year-old self, huddled in the dark, would she be willing to pay that price? At the time, Summer couldn't imagine any of it. It's normal for the young to believe their ambition can conquer anything. Leo, she said, her voice filled with a desperate hope that defied their reality. I trust you. The day I become a star, you can retire forever. She looked toward the future with such certainty. And why not? Who could have guessed that one small, seemingly insignificant choice could set so much in motion? After that day, Summer returned to LA. The long-distance torture continued, an unavoidable reality of their situation, made worse by how much they cared. If they were the types to just mess around on the side, none of this would have been a problem. Who would care what the other was doing? But after Leo started his job as a host, Summer lived in a constant state of anxiety. She felt helpless. She didn't dare say too much to him about it. It wasn't in her nature to blame others, and now, with him supporting her dream, she felt she had even less right to complain. So the emotions, with nowhere to go, turned inward and began to eat away at her. The deadliest mistake in a relationship is self-torment. You think you're doing your partner a favor by being sensitive and fragile, by bottling everything up? You actually believe that crap about not passing on negative energy is some kind of holy scripture? In a relationship, torturing yourself is just another way of torturing your partner. All it does is make you more reactive, more sensitive, until every conversation becomes an emotional minefield. The torment your partner endures is far worse than if you had just spoken your mind from the start. And when they finally ask why you didn't say something sooner, you'll probably reply, I just didn't want to give you my negative emotions. That's enough to make anyone want to tear their hair out. Wake up. You can't hide your negative emotions. If they don't come out of your mouth, they'll seep out through your strange behavior. Even a man with the patience of a 1,000-year-old tortoise like Rick Miller eventually snaps after his brother insults him in 100 different ways. You say you're not passing it on, but in reality, you're hitting them with it harder than anyone. Summer wasn't scolding you. She was just dissecting her past self and her memories. Because she had done every single one of those things. She was making the same mistakes ordinary people make in love. It's not always the big dramas that wear you down. Over time, the accumulation of these tiny, insignificant details is enough to break a person. But the summer of back then didn't understand any of this. Whenever they argued, she would panic, unsure of what to do. All she could do was hope to see Leo in person. Seeing him would fix everything, right? So, she begged and pleaded for a single day off without telling him. A relationship needs a few little surprises. After all, she got dressed up, looking her absolute best, and returned to Riverbend. She stood at the gates of Northwood University, waiting for him to get out of class. Watching the students mill about, full of youth and life, she didn't feel much envy. She and Leo were fighting for their own bright future. They were in sync on the same frequency. Theirs was a different rhythm from the romanticism of college life. Theirs was a story of realism. In truth, she knew she probably wouldn't see him just by waiting at the gate. This wasn't high school, where everyone streamed out at the same time. In college, people went back to their dorms or to the cafeteria for lunch. It was normal, but some small part of her held on to the hope. She'd seen so many videos of long-distance girlfriends surprising their boyfriends. It looked so romantic, so she thought she'd try. What if she got lucky? And then she did. Except Leo wasn't alone. Another girl was trailing him. Summer hid in the crowd, trying to listen. She only caught a few keywords. Why were you in the women's restroom? Why haven't you texted me back? The two phrases didn't seem to connect, but Summer could deduce one thing. This girl and Leo knew each other well. A familiarity that left a sour taste in her mouth. This girl was clearly a classmate, not a client. She had planned this trip for so long, traveled across the country in secret, prepared so many little surprises, only for it to end like this. Of course, she was crushed. The higher the expectation, the greater the disappointment. But she didn't turn and leave. She waited until Leo had managed to shake the girl off and was walking away alone. Then she crept up behind him and tapped him on the shoulder. "What are you doing here?" he asked, shocked. "I wanted to see you. Why didn't you tell me you were coming?" "I wanted it to be a surprise." She gently took his arm, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. "Was that girl just now one of your classmates? She was really pretty. Jealous? She's just a potential client I'm trying to develop." Summer wanted to say, "But she's clearly a student, and you were talking about not texting her back." But she held her tongue. It would just add more pressure to his work. Don't pass on the negative energy. "Summer, it's already hard for us to communicate. If you have a problem, just tell me." "It's nothing. I trust you." "Summer, you're not fine." "I'm really fine," she insisted, forcing a bright smile as she clung to his arm. At that moment, Leo let out a long sigh, a complicated expression on his face. He looked like he wanted to say something, but couldn't. The Summer of back then couldn't read it, but the woman she became understood. Leo probably wanted to say, "Summer, acting like this is what's really putting pressure on me." But he couldn't. She had come all this way, full of hope, planning a wonderful surprise. If his response had been that sentence, her fragile heart wouldn't have been able to take it. She probably would have cried for a week straight. And so, the image of that girl, bright and confident under the afternoon sun at the university gates, planted a deep and bitter seed in Summer's heart. For a long time after, she would find herself looking back, again and again, at the memory of that girl. Despite Leo's repeated explanations, Summer couldn't shake the bad feeling she had about Skylar Reed. It was a woman's intuition. And so, the problem began. After returning to LA, almost every conversation they had would inevitably, subtly, circle back to Skylar. "I really am just trying to make money off her. It's fine, I was just asking. If something is bothering you, just tell me." "Nothing's bothering me." Summer wasn't just pretending not to care. She genuinely didn't want to add to Leo's stress. "From now on, every time I go out with her, I'll send you my itinerary. I'll even record little check-in videos for you." The renowned master of micromanagement, Mr. Leo Miller, had effortlessly diagnosed the problem in Summer's heart and swiftly prescribed a solution. Satisfied, Summer hugged her phone and fell into a deep sleep. Man or woman, when conflict arises, everyone wants to see that the other person cares. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is how many women use "it's about your attitude" as an excuse for their own unreasonable behavior. But she felt Leo's proactive attitude, and it was enough. Until she saw the first check-in video. She watched it dozens of times that day. It was simple. Just Leo, secretly filming in a hospital, searching for an empty room. He had typed out an explanation, saying his plan was to pique Skylar's interest by pretending to jump in a lake, then take her to the hospital for a thrill. "Leo, you can't swim, can you?" she texted. "You can't reel in a big fish without big bait," he replied. "What if Skylar can't swim either?" "I did my research. No mistakes. It was a lie to say she wasn't jealous. But after a while of Leo working as a host, she come to terms with it. Compared to him being a boy toy for some rich woman, this felt within the realm of acceptable. The real problem was Skylar. Or rather, the threat Skylar represented. Summer had heard Leo talk about many of his clients at the lounge, even the woman who was essentially his sugar mama, Isabella, but she never felt truly threatened by them. Because if Leo ever shed his host persona, he wouldn't be able to stand being in the same room with them. But Skylar. Leo genuinely liked Skylar. That was the terrifying conclusion Summer had reached. She knew exactly what her boyfriend was like when he admired someone. When Leo spoke to other people, his words always seemed to overflow with genuine emotion. His speech was full of energy, exclamation points, and question marks, even when he was talking trash. It was a straightforward social tactic to make his speech feel emotionally charged. But it wasn't always real. Most of Leo's emotions were a performance. Only the silences between his words were genuine expressions. For a silver-tongued charmer, silence was proof that he was being sincere. Summer even knew the reason for those silences. The Leo that different people saw was a different person. To many, he was a guy bursting with life force. But Summer had seen too many sides of him over the years. Leo was always trying to be, or rather, playing the role of a person full of life. It had started back when he was the king of the neighborhood kids. When a person playing a role meets someone who truly embodies that role, all that's left is silence. Human behavior is learned, and learning requires a model. Deep inside, Leo had always carried a virtual version of himself, a vibrant, fearless guy. Skylar had made that virtual image real. To put it simply, in Skylar Reed, Leo saw the person he had always dreamed of being. The conflict was inevitable. For Summer, the situation with Leo and Skylar was the classic, you're distant, slow-to-warm-up boyfriend scenario. But the bigger problem was that when Summer thought about Skylar, she felt inferior. Skylar had the confidence Summer dreamed of, the courage she envied. Even her most cherished narrative, the young couple struggles together to achieve success, felt hollow. Because with Skylar, Leo wouldn't have to struggle to be successful. The crushing weight of her own inadequacy made Summer toss and turn at night. What made it worse were the short-form videos her phone's algorithm kept pushing on her. When your life is going poorly, you naturally seek out cheap entertainment. It saves money. After all, going out costs money. But the more you scroll, the worse you feel because the algorithm feeds on your emotions for profit. People are only in your life for a season. Love can't conquer all. A simple caption over a scenic video with a sad BGM was enough to send a sensitive, insecure girl into a depressive spiral for the night. Summer had a habit. When she didn't know what to do, she'd try to imagine what someone else would do. If it were Leo's sugar mama, wouldn't she proactively start a war? With her head full of these thoughts, Summer threw herself back in her life. Maybe if she stayed busy, she wouldn't have time to think. In the practice room, phones were confiscated. An entire afternoon could pass without seeing a single message. During breaks, while the other girls chatted in small groups, Summer sat alone in a corner, her cotton t-shirt soaked with sweat. The greatest enemy on the road to success is always yourself. Because you never know when you'll make it. You have to constantly fight against your own doubts. A goal with no deadline is a recipe for misery. It's the same in any job. In those moments, you desperately need an emotional anchor. What's Leo doing right now? Staring at the glaring fluorescent lights in the windowless practice room, a bead of sweat trickled down from her hairline. In the harsh light, her face looked exceptionally pale. The face that popped in her head first wasn't Leo's. It was Skylar's. Her heart felt unsteady. She tried to calm it, to force it back into rhythm. She wanted to call Leo, but that was the curse of a long-distance relationship. There were a million ways to connect in a normal relationship, but long distance, there was only the phone. And right now, she couldn't call him, which meant for the rest of the afternoon, the only image in her mind would be the smiling face of Skylar Reed. And on that quiet afternoon, under the weak chill of the practice room's AC, standing on the wooden floor in her dance socks, Summer Lynn finally broke. Unable to bear the chaotic storm of her thoughts any longer, she made a brave decision. Before she acted on it, she found her agent, Laura. Many agents and their stars become genuine friends. For a celebrity, a private life is a necessity, and there are often only a few people they can truly be honest with. An agent is usually one of them. So, what you're saying is, your little boyfriend is a charming guy, and some rich girl is chasing him. Something like that. Laura was the picture of a stereotypical career woman. Short hair, a sharp blazer, a latte perpetually in hand. She sat with her legs crossed, her expression coolly detached. If you want my advice, I'd tell you to break up with him. But I know that's useless. Since you asked, though, I'll tell you what I think. If this were me, I'd have a talk with my boyfriend. You can't stand guard against a thief 1,000 days in a row. If your boyfriend is the type to stray, someone will eventually lure him away. So you have to deal with the problem at the source. I trust him. Men aren't trustworthy. Or rather, people aren't trustworthy, Summer. Everyone gets tempted when a better option comes along. Whether a relationship lasts comes down to conscience. And in this day and age, you can't bet on someone having a conscience. Laura, I just want to borrow a phone to make a call. Seeing her so stubborn, Laura sighed and placed her phone on the table in front of Summer. She said, almost as a dare, let's make a bet. Tell him you know someone is pursuing him. Tell him to make things clear with her and delete all her contact info. If he doesn't, you'll break up. I guarantee you he'll try to sweet-talk you while making 1,000 excuses. In Laura's eyes, any man who could bewitch Summer this badly had to be a manipulative player. Laura, I just want to make a phone call. Fine, fine. Make your call. The expression on her agent's face screamed, don't listen to your elders, and you'll suffer the consequences. Then, in the next second, her expression changed, because the first words out of Summer's mouth when the call connected were, Leo, let's break up. Then she hung up. Laura panicked. You skip way too many steps. I said tell him to delete her info, or you'll break up. Laura, I couldn't say anything else. Summer dropped the phone and curled up in the chair, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Tears and voices are natural enemies. When tears fall in an unbroken stream, the voice fractures into broken pieces. Laura, he'd be so much better off with her than with me. He wouldn't have to be so tired all the time. Her agent's brain practically short-circuited. Summer, if you said you were jealous and breaking up in a fit of anger, I could understand. If you said you thought it through and realized stars can't date, I can understand that too. Hell, if you said the wind was blowing outside and you're in a bad mood and wanted to break up, I could even understand that. But this pure, self-sacrificing reason? Forgive me, but I truly don't get it. I can't be mistaken about the look in his eyes. He really likes girls like Skylar. Men are naturally fickle. They like any girl who's pretty. But a smart man knows who he should keep by his side. But I want Leo to be able to chase the life he wants to. If he wants it, he should be the one to break up. What are you doing, breaking up for him? If I don't bring it up, he never will. That's just the kind of person he is. Summer wiped her nose with the back of her hand, her eyes blurry with tears. She stood up, waved a dismissive hand, and turned to leave. I also hope, she said, her voice barely a whisper, that he can find the life he truly loves. Summer learned about this part of the story later, from Leo himself, during a frank conversation on the street below her apartment, just before his accident. The day she called, Leo had just left the Cypress Lounge. Even while staying with his wealthy client, he would occasionally come back to the lounge to pick up some side work. Money was money. That day, he just finished catching up with Silas. Any problems in your love life? Silas had asked. Nope, Leo had slurred, drunk. There have to be. What, you think guys in this line of work can't have girlfriends? They do, Silas said. But those girls are either after the money, or they've been duped by the sweet talk. None of them last on love alone. Leo had puffed out his chest. Then I'm about to open your eyes. I want the money and the love. I'm going to have my favorite girl in the world counting stacks of cash. Stop bullshitting and go sober up. Don't let your client find out you're taking side gigs, or you'll be in for it. I'm not that drunk. Leo strode confidently down the stairs, stumbled, and fell flat on his face in the alley outside the lounge. The air was thick with a mixed smell of alcohol. It smells good going in, but it's foul coming back up. Leo lay there, listening to Summer's voice on the phone, and before he could even reply, she hung up. He lay on the cold ground in silence, staring up at the empty sky. He said nothing at all, cutting back to the present. Can we please talk about something happy for a change? Leo groaned from the sofa, following along as the story played out in his head. They were both star-crossed from the start. Add the long-distance curse to the mix, and it was a wonder their story wasn't even more depressing. Summer, I told you, talk about your sacrifices, not all this miserable stuff. But this is what our relationship was like. It was hard. Leo supposed she had a point. Why do people even agree to long-distance relationships? They suffer through a period of hardship in exchange for a sweet future. Well, they'd suffered, but the sweetness never came. So this is how I ended up with a mental illness. Feelings are a strange thing. Sometimes you can trip just drinking a glass of water. Especially now, with life being so stressful, people are always on edge, ready to break down over the smallest thing. Still, this incident is going to be hard to explain away. The fact that Leo had blown up Roy Gannon's place was, if nothing else, definitive proof that he was mentally unstable. The doctors themselves had said his behavior was symptomatic of mental illness. What defense was there? To solve this, Leo had to change his approach. I don't have to deny I'm sick, he thought aloud. I just need to prove that I'm cured. The standard for something like that were all over the place. It was like performance art. Some people see it as high art, others think the artists are just insane. The judgment call would have to come from a doctor. I'll just get Dr. Morris to do an evaluation. Leo said it casually to Summer. Dr. Morris was her relative, after all. He hoped she could pull a few strings. After all, Dr. Morris was a man whose principles were famously flexible. The upside of a man with flexible principles is that he can be bought. The downside is that anyone can buy him. Summer was, of course, willing to help. But she hesitated. What's wrong? Nothing. Did Uncle Rick only mention the propane tank incident? Got it. There are other incidents. The sun's almost up. Let's go to the hospital and get the checkup done to deal with the immediate problem. We can talk on the way. All right. What time is your flight? 1 o'clock this afternoon. Running on no sleep, Leo and Summer headed to the hospital. A whole contingent of the Miller family was also on their way. Leo had tasked his father with rousing the troops. It wasn't strictly necessary to rush like this. Leo was just being petty. You old geezers have nothing better to do than cause me trouble? Well, I'll find something for you to do. Forget sleeping. Everyone get up and suffer with me. Let's see who gives out first, me at 20 or you fossils. If they don't answer their phones, go break their windows. Son, you don't have to tell me that. Whoever doesn't get up, I'll toss a string of firecrackers in their yard. You're a real bastard, Dad. Takes one to know one, son. You're the big bastard. You're the little bastard. This is disgusting. Leo hung up the phone and found himself standing in front of the hospital once again. The morning rush was just beginning, and a long line had already formed. Hospitals were never short on people. Talk while we walk. Don't just walk, he prompted Summer. Leo, after I broke up with you that time, we got back together pretty quickly. Obviously, Leo could have guessed that with his eyes closed. There was no way a simple let's break up from Summer would have been the end of it. Hearing those words would have left him more confused than hurt. I must have called you a lot, asking for an explanation. I didn't answer any of them. I was stuck in my own head. It was so stupid. So how do we get back together? Leo registered at the front desk, and he and Summer walked side by side to the elevator, riding up to the familiar 4th floor. Only after they stepped out and were away from the crowd did Summer answer softly. Skylar Reed came to find me. She told you to get back with me. She told me a little about how you were doing. Got it. She described my pathetic state so vividly that you took pity on me. No, she told me, straight up, that my existence was holding you back, that I wasn't right for you. That sounds like Skylar. Leo nodded to himself. She had said as much herself. She wanted to take Summer's place. And the first step to taking someone's place is to get rid of them. His hand was on the doorknob of Dr. Morris's office, ready to push it open. But before he did, a question surfaced in his sleep-deprived mind. But knowing your personality, if Skylar said something like that, you would have backed down even more. I did. I backed down. Then how do we get back together? It's a long story. She pulled some strings and became a trainee. And she became my roommate. Wait a minute. Leo's head swiveled like a security camera, his stiff neck making a series of sharp cracking sounds. You're telling me Skylar not only met you, but she became a trainee? Why would I lie to you about that? But she told me she's never met you. Leo was stunned. Who was lying? How is that possible? When we saw her at Apex Media, we even talked about the last time we'd met. A sledgehammer slammed into Leo's brain, sending a shudder down his spine. Pain. Excruciating pain. But the bigger problem was that his hand fell away from the doorknob. He was hesitating. Leo would admit he had some issues. But these days, anyone who went to a hospital for a psychological test would come away with some kind of diagnosis. As long as it didn't affect his daily life, he didn't really care. But as his memories slowly returned, it seemed his illness was returning with them. For the most part, it was under control. He occasionally had the urge to stick his head in a fish tank and drink, but it was just an occasional urge. With a little self-control, it was fine. It didn't stop him from eating, sleeping, or making money. But he had a strong feeling, a gut instinct, that he couldn't keep digging into this. Stopping here was the best option. If he kept remembering, something bad would happen. Don't say any more, Summer. I need to wash my face. Leo shook his head and stumbled down the hall to the restroom. He turned on a faucet and let the cold water cascade over his face. The icy shock brought a moment of clarity. This premonition wasn't some mystical sixth sense. It was a logical conclusion he had reached through careful analysis. No one knew better than him where this sickness came from. Leo, did her head hurt? Dr. Evelyn Shaw had appeared from nowhere. She stood behind him, gently stroking his head. Instead of offering him a paper towel as he might have expected, she reached over and turned the water pressure up. Evelyn had never been one for conventional rules. Leo, no one knows better than you where your illness comes from, right? I know. I just don't know how to describe it. You have a severe messiah complex. Evelyn leaned against the wall, looking so frail it was hard to tell which of them was the patient. It's also called a savior complex. You gain a sense of identity and value by saving others. Savior is such a pretentious word. The savior in Crossfire at least gets a grenade launcher. I'm barehanded and powerless. What kind of savior am I supposed to be? Leo, there's a very important concept in psychology regarding self-perception. The you in your eyes is not you. The others in your eyes are you. So, by your logic, if I see you as someone who needs to be saved, that means I'm someone who needs to be saved. Correct. You've always been someone who needs to be saved. Then why am I playing the savior? I should just wait around to be rescued. Because the rescued must save themselves. The process of saving others is your process of saving yourself. Evelyn sighed and stepped forward, cupping Leo's face in her hands. She kissed him, right there in the public restroom, oblivious to anyone who might see. A glistening thread of saliva connected their lips as she pulled away. This is the source of your schizophrenia. Do you know why, in myths, when a god is facing their own calamity, they always choose to descend to the mortal realm and save humanity? Because that is the process of saving themselves. Most people's idea of themselves is an idealized version, a beautified image of who they want to be. To truly solve your own problems, you can't rely on solitude. You have to interact with others because only then can you touch the real you. The barrage of psychological theory left Leo reeling. It was too academic. He didn't understand it. But he was deeply shaken. So was the bystander at the next sink. This was a hospital, for crying out loud. I don't get it. I'm going to find Dr. Morris. Leo, stop running away. Do you remember what I told you? Evelyn grabbed his arm, her voice a soft whisper. Leo, real pain is the mountain of knives you must cross on the path to happiness. The words running away triggered something in him. He spun around and gripped Evelyn's thin shoulders. I'm not running away, but people like us live differently than you do. When a problem comes up, we solve it. The right way is to be grounded, to do what's in front of you. You don't need to overthink everything else. The answers are on the road, right? He pulled her into a hug, gently patting her back. It's okay. Don't worry. I can handle anything. Leo, that sentence right there is a classic symptom of a savior complex. If being a badass is a symptom, then I don't mind being a savior. It's one of the few hobbies a man has. Leo smiled and turned away, striding purposefully toward the door. Dr. Morris's office was packed. The bearded doctor saw the crowd and felt his knees go weak. Director, what is going on? You're asking me? Who am I supposed to ask? The hospital director was just as baffled. He was out of breath, his tie askew. When he got the call from the Millers, he thought someone else in the family had died. If you're going to die, die at home. Why bring a whole mob to the hospital? This was bound to be trouble. It was only when he saw they were heading for the psychiatric department that he started to relax. But the next sentence sent a jolt through his heart. Director Matthews, we'd like to get an evaluation on my grandnephew's mental state. Could you have a word with the doctor? Seeing the look in Uncle Chester's eye, Director Matthews's stomach sank. He was high-ranking enough to know about the power struggles within the Miller family. Did Chester really care about his grandnephew's health? This was a transparent attempt to force him to pick a side. Director Matthews glanced at Rick Miller, who was leaning against the doorframe, chewing on a toothpick. His face might as well have had the word explosive written on it. Someone else could pick a side. He wasn't touching this. Dr. Morris, just proceed with a normal consultation. I need to use the restroom. Director, please come back soon. I've been a bit constipated lately. It might be a while. And just like that, Dr. Morris was left alone in the office. He wasn't on clinic duty today, so he was the only one in the inpatient office. He was utterly, completely screwed. The small office was divided into 3 factions. Led by Uncle Chester was the We Hope Leo is Crazy party. Led by Rick Miller was the If you say my son is crazy, I'll kill you party. And then there was Leo and Summerlin, none of which had anything to do with Dr. Morris, because he had no earthly idea what he was supposed to do. Leo, what is all this? I need a psychiatric evaluation. Oh, okay. But you don't need to bring so many family members for that. I need to prove to them that I'm not mentally ill. I get it. Dr. Morris nodded sagely, then shook his head emphatically. You want me to fudge it? What are you talking about? Leo, the probability of you being a normal person is the same as the probability of a propane tank growing legs. So you're saying the chances are 0? No, I'm saying that on the day the world becomes so upside down that seeing a propane tank walking naked down the street doesn't seem strange. On that day, you might be a normal person. You motherfucker. Leo didn't think he was that sick. How was he not normal? He had imagined the determination of his mental state would be a complex affair. Even without pulling strings, it shouldn't be this simple, this. Final. Dr. Morris. Even criminals get a trial before they're sentenced to prison. How can you just pronounce judgment like this? Procedure? There is one. Dr. Morris pulled open a drawer and rummaged around in a corner. This is all the data I collected to treat your amnesia. A history of suicide attempts, loss of behavioral control leading to harm of others, memory loss. Isn't this all clear as day evidence? But that was before. I don't have any symptoms now. Leo didn't understand. He was fine now. Why was he being handed a death sentence? Give me a test. You have to at least test me. I don't accept this. Leo, you would never pass a standard test, Dr. Morris said, his face a picture of distress. He said all of this without any attempt to lower his voice, in front of everyone in the room. Look, my principles may be flexible, but correctly informing a patient of their actual condition is my professional duty. Especially with mental illness, I can't let you have even a sliver of false hope. Letting you think you're not sick would be harming you. But I don't have any symptoms. Leo, in the eyes of a mental patient, their own behavior is always normal. Then tell me from a normal person's perspective, what about me isn't normal? Faced with Leo's challenge, Dr. Morris shuffled the files on his desk, as if choosing his words carefully. Leo, some things are better left unsaid. It would turn your current life upside down. It's better to find your way out of fog than to be burned to ash by the sun. I hit people and it hurts. Keep talking like that, and I won't show you any mercy. Let's deal with the other matter first. I'll prepare and talk with you later. Dr. Morris sighed and looked up at Leo with pity in his eyes. Leo returned the look with one of his own. He thought Dr. Morris was the one with the problem. The man had clearly seen so many mental patients that he'd gone mad himself. But now he had a new problem. Dr. Morris had said all of this right in front of Uncle Chester. How was he supposed to spin this? Uncle Chester, this doctor and I are old friends. We're just joking around, Leo said, scratching his head and giving Chester a sheepish grin. He hadn't expected Dr. Morris to be so brutally blunt. But to his surprise, Chester seemed completely unconcerned. He leaned back in his chair, yawning, and waved a dismissive hand, telling Leo to do as he pleased. Behind him, Julian started to say something, but Chester waved him off. The two whispered to each other. Uncle, it's obvious Leo found a doctor he knows. Let him find whoever he wants. Did you forget what we guessed last night? Chester shook his head, the picture of a master strategist. Leo isn't sick at all. He and his father are working together to bait us. Really? Otherwise, with Leo's intelligence, would he use such a simple method to let us know he's sick? Uncle, I feel like we might be overthinking this. Julian, you're still too naive. Neither Rick nor Leo is an idiot. One person making a mistake is an accident, but since both of them are being so careless, it proves Leo is definitely not sick. It's all a trap. If we believe them, who knows what kind of pit they have waiting for us. Uncle, you are brilliant. Pleased with the compliment, Chester's lips curled into a smirk before he quickly suppressed it. He glanced around the room, his eyes meeting Leo's questioning gaze. He nodded slightly. I understood the gist of it. It means my grandnephew isn't sick, right? Good, good. Uncle Chester, are you sure you understand English? Leo asked, a question straight from the soul. I went to school for a few years. How could I not understand? No. Seriously, Uncle, are you joking with me? Which part of that conversation made you think I'm not sick? This young man, Chester said, growing more certain with every word, a hint of disdain creeping into his voice. Nothing better to do than claim he's sick all day. It was as if he was saying, stop playing around, nephew. I've already seen through your little game. He shook his head like an office worker eager to clock out. Julian, your cousin still doesn't believe he's healthy. Go have a word with him. See, cousin, you're just overthinking things. It's a common problem with young people these days. They stay cooped up at home and say they have depression. Just need to get some fresh air. Faced with these baffling statements, Leo turned his head in disbelief to look at his father. What the hell did you tell them? Weren't they the ones saying I was sick? Don't look at me, son. I'm just as confused. Father and son stared at each other, completely lost. For a moment, they had no idea what was happening. The world has finally gone so crazy that your old man can't understand it anymore. Rick Miller swung his arm, clapping Leo on the head. But son, some of what they said is right. Don't overthink it. Nothing is a big deal. You think I'm sick too? Of course not, son. No one is healthier than you. Rick's aging face broke into a smile. He reached out to pat Leo's head again, but Leo slapped his hand away. Why are you all acting so weird? Leo said irritably. So, is this over? Can I go now? Go on, son. I'll walk you out. You'll walk us out. Take Summer, too. She has to get to the airport. Right? Us. I'm going to find Summer. Leo pushed open the door to the consultation room. The familiar smell of antiseptic inexplicably tugged at a nerve deep in his brain. When he pushed the door open, Leo saw a completely different scene. The hallway was empty except for 5 very familiar figures, arguing about something. Peyton, Evelyn, Isabella, Skylar, and Summer. If you're going on a trip, then just go. Stop hesitating, Isabella said, leaning against the wall with her arms crossed. In any battle, Isabella was always the main DPS, a pure damage dealer. We don't know what Leo will choose yet. Skylar shot back, hands on her hips like a little fighting rooster. Whatever he chooses, it won't be you. Isabella's gaze swept over the 2 silent, more mature women, her meaning clear. Majority rules. Leo has already made his choice, hasn't he? But he's still so young. Does he really have to enter a mature phase so early? I'll say it again. Go pursue your romantic life. Leo will make his own choice. Leo stood in the doorway, listening to their bickering, his head starting to pound. Stop arguing. I'm not going anywhere, he said. The moment the words left his mouth, he saw a dozen shifts in their eyes. The mature women group seemed to let out a collective sigh of relief. Summer's eyes were full of pity. As for Skylar, her eyes seemed to hold a flicker of disappointment. What's the big deal? I think living like this is fine, Leo said. He didn't see the point in dwelling on how they had all managed to show up here at the same time. Since everyone was gathered, it seemed like a good time to have an honest chat. I'll stay in Riverbend, inherit the family business, and live my life. But Leo, do you really not have any dreams anymore? Skylar asked. Who says dreams are more important than reality? They both have their pros and cons. It's all about personal choice. Leo stated his opinion. He felt the conversation should end there. A hospital was a place for peace and quiet. Why were they fighting here? Besides, it was clear that Isabella and Skylar were the dominant voices. Once they were settled, 90% of the noise would die down. The others wouldn't speak up. Leo, choosing a realistic life is a good thing. Have you forgotten all the hard times we went through together? In an instant, Summer betrayed Skylar and the youthful dreamers faction. Leo, I think you should be brave and try a life you haven't lived before. Go. The second betrayal came from Evelyn, who spoke weakly from her seat against the wall. With their additions, the dynamics of the battlefield shifted once again. The backstabbing squad had entered the fray. Leo closed his eyes, listening to the cacophony. He didn't understand what there was to argue about. He just wanted some peace. Peyton, Leo, do you think you succeeded? What? Are you sick too? Peyton, arms crossed, crouched down and straightened Leo's collar. She said something that silenced the entire hallway. Leo, has it all been worth it? What are you talking about? Leo's expression was one of extreme annoyance. He shook his head and walked into the elevator, leaving the hospital. He went to the convenience store by the entrance, bought a pack of cigarettes, and sat on the edge of a planter, staring up at the familiar sycamore trees. Is it noisy? Dr. Morris sat down beside him. You're a doctor. Why don't you do something about them? In a hospital of all places. Only you can control them. If you say one more cryptic thing, I'm leaving. Leo started to get up, but Dr. Morris grabbed his arm. Leo, you've already realized it yourself, haven't you? Realized what? I have a very complete understanding of your past. The parts that make up your personality include a tragic and fragile childhood, a psychological illness severe enough to lead to suicide, an emotional detachment caused by your work at the lounge, and a period of forbearance and eventual comeback when facing the wealthy elite. What's your point? You must have heard the phrase, the you in your eyes is not you, the others in your eyes are you. Get away from me. Leo. Dr. Morris stood up, trying to catch up to Leo's retreating figure under the dancing morning shadows. Then he saw Leo stop. He turned around, his eyes welling with tears. Then what about Skylar? Leo asked. They're the others in your eyes. Skylar is the you in your eyes. Your definition of others is largely derived from your personal understanding and speculation about the world. It's like how people use stereotypes and labels to define a person. The you in your eyes usually comes from fantasy. People subconsciously compensate for their flaws in their minds and glorify their strengths. But the common thread is they're all you. Fear and anxiety appeared on Leo's face, a rare expression for him. He asked, his voice trembling, so my symptom is... You don't have to believe me. You can find a way to verify it yourself. Dr. Morris straightened his wrinkled white coat and stepped into the sunlight, facing Leo eye to eye. He spoke with grave sincerity. Because there are so many voices in your heart, You must have heard this sentence before. What sentence? The world is noisy. Let me cover your ears for you. I've heard it, but I know who said it. Dr. Morris turned and walked away, leaving only a single, light sentence hanging in the air. The others in your eyes always have the characteristic of needing to be saved. But there is only one person who appeared purely to save you, without a single impurity. Listen to it. The world is noisy. Let me cover your ears for you. Such a grand sense of salvation. Perhaps only the fantasy of yourself can save the real you from the mire. Chapter 134. Chapter 459. You mentioned your emotional troubles, how you often have strange fantasies about men and women. I asked if you had niche kinks like masochism or a strong desire for control. So what do I fantasize about? You fantasize that someone loves you. The above conversation was from just after Leo was discharged from the hospital, an exchange with Evelyn. Chapter 5. He never thought that, months later, some bullets would fly back around and hit him right between the eyes. Stop spewing bullshit. Leo waved his hand dismissively. He couldn't believe it. Words could lie, but feelings couldn't. These were months of tangible, real experiences. The slap of slippers on the floor, the pain of bumping into a wall, the racing heartbeat of a kiss. It was all so real. Damn it, did Uncle Chester bribe you? That was the only explanation Leo could think of. He stood at the hospital entrance, golden threads of sunlight filtering through the sycamore leaves. It was a dreamlike scene. On a normal day, Leo could have come up with 100 different romantic lines to say to a girl. Unfortunately, the person in front of him was a round-faced man with a beard. Leo, I've said 1,000 times. Go and verify it yourself. I won't stop you. Fine. You say this is all my fantasy? My dad can't be a fantasy, can he? Obviously not. Leo didn't even need to think that hard. He just had to get his dad over here to explain everything, and then he would personally slap Dr. Morris twice hard. Who could tolerate this? If this was really a fantasy, then Leo was the god of delusion. Dad, perfect timing. Get over here. What is it, son? Tell him. When did you first meet Summerlin? How did you crash Isabella's wedding? You even stole Mr. Cole's dentures. This should have been the simplest, most direct question. Leo even wanted Rick to give a live demonstration of his denture-stealing technique. But to his shock, his father's usual boisterous demeanor was gone, replaced by a look of profound pity in his cloudy eyes. Son, he said softly, there's no Summerlin. Dad, are you sick? Have you forgotten how you used to call her your little daughter-in-law? Son, you kept insisting there was a little girl named Summer standing in front of you. You even described her personality perfectly. If I denied it, you'd pull my beard. Stop bullshitting. You can act once or twice, but you can't act for 20 years. Faced with this question, Rick Miller fell silent. Only Dr. Morris spoke, his head lowered. A father's love is like a mountain. Love my ass. I met Summer when I was 12. You're telling me I've had a mental illness since I was 12. Leo was speechless. The plot holes were enormous. But he believed everything had to have a motive. At first, he suspected Dr. Morris was bribed by Uncle Chester. But Chester couldn't have bribed his own father, could he? Dad, tell me the truth. Is this some kind of treatment plan? Did a doctor ask you to cooperate? Son, just accept reality. I'll accept your mother's reality. Leo turned and walked away from the hospital, pulling out his phone. So you're all liars, huh? I'll call them myself. If he went by alphabetical order, Evelyn Shaw was first. He dialed her number. When the familiar voice came through the speaker, Leo wanted nothing more than to punch both men standing behind him. Could a fantasy have a voice? Evelyn, tell these two lunatics you're a living, breathing person, as opposed to a dead one. Evelyn's voice came through, followed by a question. It's getting heated over here. Where did you go? What is there to argue about? Hearing the word choice, Leo felt a wave of irritation wash over him. He instinctively hung up the phone and glared at the two men. Well, what part of that was fake? Leo, come and see for yourself. Dr. Morris held out his phone, playing a video he had just recorded. It showed the scene of Leo making the phone call. Evelyn, tell these two lunatics you're a living, breathing person. What is there to argue about? The distance between them was close enough that the phone's microphone could pick up everything. Fortunately, it had captured Leo's voice. Unfortunately, besides his voice, there was nothing else. Leo stared at the video, speechless. Dr. Morris, give me an explanation. What? Because their voices have only ever been heard by you. Leo tilted his head back, looking at the sky, trying to process this unbelievable fact. This isn't right. It's not right. Even as he repeated it, even as 1,000 memories screamed his mind, providing evidence to refute it all, the video was like the final, damning piece of evidence in a capital case. The memories were like alibis and witness testimonies, but the video was a recording of the murder itself. When the tape shows your brutal actions, does an alibi even matter? I'll say it again. You can verify this in any way you want. Dr. Morris, when did we meet? After you blew up Roy Gannon's house. How long have I been like this? It's hard to know about your childhood, so we can only really start from when this Summer Lynn character appeared. I still can't imagine it. How could I fantasize a story this grand, this complex? Because your fantasy is a masterpiece years in the making, a work of resistance. Your objective sensitivity and fragility in childhood created Summer Lynn. Your subjective resistance was to protect her. The repression and psychological issues you developed as you grew up created Evelyn Shaw. Your subjective resistance was to save her. The societal beatdown you took from men like Roy Gannon, your dissatisfaction with a harsh reality, created Peyton. Your subjective resistance was to help her climb out from the bottom. The emotional numbness you developed after experiencing the debauchery of the lounge created Isabella Vance. Your subjective resistance was to make her more human. Your objective life experiences created your flaws, and they are the parts of you. Your subjective consciousness has always been fighting back. Conflict is always the main theme of any story, so this grand fantasy emerged. The four women above are your flaws, caused by your past experiences. But a person isn't just made of their past. Buddhists speak of the past, present, and future. The future itself represents a beautiful wish, because people can only approach a defined future, never the true future. Because people always have a future. So this beautiful, fantastical future is Skylar Reed. In psychological terms, she is the you that you believe yourself to be. We've talked about the past, and we've talked about the future. So who are you in the present? The present me is me, Leo said with certainty. The present you is not you. Dr. Morris walked carefully under the sun, the dappled tree shadows like a dense net. The present is influenced by both the past and the future. Your past experiences are influencing you now, and your vision for the future is also influencing you now. You can never truly exist in the present. Then how? By forgetting both the past and the future. That is the ultimate goal of your resistance. Simplify your past and future into these figures, and then completely forget them. Then your illness will be cured. Wait, you mean amnesia? Goosebumps erupted all over Leo's body. He started to gasp for air, his breathing becoming rapid and shallow. Some kind of terrible logic was clicking into place. Leo, you've heard it many times. The amnesia itself was a treatment for your illness. Perhaps you couldn't understand it before, because amnesia seems like a temporary fix. But do you understand now? Forget your endless fantasies and embrace your real life. I'm sorry, I still can't accept it. Is it that you can't accept it, or that you from a God's eye view can't accept it? What God's eye view? Leo didn't understand. Dr. Morris smiled and looked up at the sky at a 45-degree angle, his eyes seeming to pierce through a dimension. Leo, do you remember the feeling of writing in a diary as a child? When people write in a diary, they often imagine an audience, a third party watching. That's why many children deliberately beautify themselves in their diaries. Your fantasy itself is a form of diary writing. You subconsciously believe an audience will see your fantasy. So, in this grand fantasy story of yours, isn't there a lot of third-person narration and detailed character descriptions? Haven't you deliberately filled in many details? Dr. Morris stood his ground, but he raised his hands and began to clap. Leo, are you also fantasizing that the audience is applauding your story? Chapter 460. Leo was devastated. The impact of these grotesque facts was too much. He returned to the hospital and saw the 5 women still arguing in front of the office. Oblivious to them, he opened his phone's camera and started recording. Their expressions were so vivid, so real. But on the screen, there was nothing. Son of a bitch. Ghosts in broad daylight. Leo couldn't articulate what he was feeling. His mind was filled with so much evidence proving their existence, but it was all subjective. No objective fact, no piece of physical evidence could prove they were real. Leo refused to believe it. If he gave in, he might as well die. So he walked. He walked to the Cypress Lounge and found Silas. Silas, if you lie to me even once when you're old and sick, there will be no one to wipe your ass. Leo used the harshest threat he could think of, but all he got in return was a cup of tea and a single sentence. Leo, try to look on the bright side. My dad acting along with me can be explained away by a father's love is like a mountain. What the hell is your excuse? A godfather is still a father. I don't believe it. Leo kept walking. He went to Summer Lynn's old house. Ma'am, do you have a daughter? What silly thing is this child saying? You have a daughter. Her name is Summerlin. We've known each other since we were kids. We were in love. Has this child lost his memory again? Mrs. Lin looked at Leo with a mixture of confusion and warmth, pulling him inside. A thought seemed to strike her. Yes, that's right. You two are married. She's your wife. Ma'am, didn't we break up? Why are you lying? Caught in her little trick, Mrs. Lin's face flushed. I was just joking, dear. I thought you'd lost your memory again, and I thought maybe saying that would help you two get back together. Leo didn't care about that. In fact, he was happy. He was happy because Mrs. Lin felt so real. Give up the fantasy, you foolish child. Summer's mom is just another detail you filled in. Jesus Christ, you're like a ghost. Seeing Dr. Morris leaning against the doorframe, Leo admitted he was starting to develop a prejudice against men with beards. Am I God? In your fantasy world, you are God. Everything about them is subject to your will. Abito would be so jealous. Indeed, he could have created a world with only Rin. Watch less anime. Leo shoved Dr. Morris aside and charged down the stairs. He seemed full of fighting spirit, refusing to surrender. But in reality, all he could do was walk. The truth isn't scary. A lie isn't scary. Not being able to tell the difference is the most terrifying thing of all. When he stood in the restroom and Evelyn suddenly appeared behind him, everything started to feel unreal. When truth and falsehood existed simultaneously, Leo began to feel numb. Leo, give up your fantasies. Forget all this, and you can have a new life. But I don't think it's fake. But Leo, Dr. Morris said, sitting on a bench with his legs crossed, a reminiscent look in his eyes. Have you ever considered that this was your final solution from before? You've always been tormented by the conflict between real and false feelings, suffering through a weary life. So the car accident, the amnesia, it wasn't passive. It was a choice you actively made. You loved them so much, and they loved you so much. But why, before the accident, did you say goodbye to each of them? I'll give you the real answer. Because you were saying goodbye to your false fantasies as a way to welcome a new life. So you never really had amnesia. You just forgot some fantasies. Leo listened silently to Dr. Morris's words. He no longer argued or resisted. His eyes were empty, numb. It was as if he had stopped thinking. He walked and walked. Through L.A., through the small rural villages, through Northwood University, through Riverbend Estates. He did nothing. He just walked. Slower and slower, his back bending lower and lower, until under the setting sun he collapsed. He forgot, not because he wanted to, but because truth and falsehood were assaulting his brain at the same time. All he could do was forget. It's all fake. What's fake? A delicate face suddenly appeared in his line of sight. It was a young woman dressed in the robes of a Taoist priestess. Leo struggled to sit up. In the twilight, he saw a sign in the distance with a few large, calligraphic characters. It wasn't Big Stud Bug, a dumb name he'd once seen. It was the Celestial Master Sanctuary. The delicate-faced girl seemed to have just recognized the person collapsed on the ground. A shy blush crept in her cheeks. She struggled to form words, but nothing came out. Finally, she managed a hesitant sentence. Leo, are you here to see me? I'm here to see everyone. Oh, the girl turned her head away, a bright smile flashing across her face before she quickly turned back, whispering, Have you had breakfast? Are you fake? I've never had plastic surgery. Never mind. It's too complicated to explain. Leo got to his feet, shaking the dry leaves from his clothes. He started to walk away, but the woman behind him grabbed his arm. Leo, if you're not in a hurry, you could try to explain. Maybe I'll understand. In short, Skylar Reed, Isabella Vance, Summer Lin, Evelyn Shaw, and Peyton are all fake. The girl's unadorned face showed utter confusion. Her slender frame seemed even more ethereal in the loose robes. The sunlight passed through the bridge of her nose, like a breath of fresh air in an open field. She clearly didn't understand his words. But that didn't stop her from asking the one question that mattered. But I'm Willow. Leo spun around, his eyes wide. Willow isn't fake. Leo's gaze was fixed on her, unwavering. Dr. Morris had been crystal clear that the other 5 were constructs of his mind. But he had never mentioned Willow. Leo, do you want me to take you to the hospital? Willow's brow trembled, her expression tense. Leo's behavior was clearly frightening her. Dogs wouldn't even go to that hospital. That idiot Dr. Morris is definitely lying in wait for me there. Is he the Dr. Morris you're talking about? Following Willow's pointed finger, Leo stared at the familiar figure at the edge of the woods as if he'd seen a ghost. You haunt me wherever I go, don't you? Just doing my job, Dr. Morris said calmly. Willow, go get Master Hausher. Tell him there's a ghost here with a round face and a beard. Tell him to get rid of it. No need to go to such trouble. Dr. Morris gave Willow a polite nod and gestured for Leo to calm down. I'm actually quite pleased to see you in a relationship with Ms. Shung. Did she pay you off? No, but interacting with a real person is always more rational than interacting with a fantasy. Honestly, doctor, I still can't accept this. The proof is in the pudding. Why don't you take a picture? Dr. Morris pulled out his phone, aimed it at Leo and Willow, and snapped a photo. On the screen, Willow was clearly visible. The proof, literally, was in the picture. Ms. Shung is fundamentally different from the others, Dr. Morris explained, counting on his fingers as he gazed at the sky. She's the choice you made after you began to truly resist. Stop with the cryptic nonsense. All it means is that she showed up after my amnesia a little later than the others, right? You completely forgot the flaws of your past and the fantasies of your future. And in that state, you accepted her. Bullshit. If I had accepted her, she wouldn't be at the Celestial Master Sanctuary right now. She'd be at home, having my kids. Leo, whether you've accepted her or not, you know the truth in your heart, Dr. Morris said, his smile unwavering, as if talking to himself. Just compare her to the other girls who like you. Who among them, the ones you haven't truly accepted, could have made it this far? More importantly, when you're with her, you don't project your old insecurities or your idealized fantasies of the future onto her, because you forgot all of it. So, under those circumstances, Willow was the one who best met your standards. It was the first truly equal relationship of your life. You weren't trying to save anyone. Your relationship began on a foundation of an equal exchange. Good-looking guy, beautiful girl. Similar family backgrounds. A gentle personality that complements your more assertive nature. A homebody lifestyle that balances your ambition to be out conquering the world. In short, after you lost your memory, you found your missing present. Leo didn't nod or shake his head at Dr. Morris's long-winded explanation. Everything the man had said, from start to finish, had a sliver of truth to it. He really had accepted Willow in his heart. If he hadn't, her fate would have been the same as Clem's. Leo sat under the tree, silently digesting the doctor's words. Was Willow really the present he'd been searching for? So, are you coming back to the hospital with me? I'm going to stay at the sanctuary for a while. All right. Over the course of the afternoon, Willow peeked into his room from the window 4 or 5 times. It was obvious she still had no idea what was going on. Leo didn't explain, so she didn't disturb him. Each time she came, she would quietly place a glass of sweet tea where he could see it, then slip away. Willow, do you know Skylar Reed? No. Then you definitely don't know Summer Lynn or Isabella Vance, either. Never heard of them. I see. Leo sounded as if he'd already accepted the answer, lying on the bed without another word. The feeling was as jarring as hearing a knock on your door in the morning, expecting a census worker, only to open it and find the hallway filled with shuffling zombies. The seamless transition from tranquil domesticity to bizarre horror, with no time to adjust. And just when you refuse to believe it's real, planning to pinch yourself awake, you get a mass text from the government officially explaining the zombie outbreak. The power is out. Your own father is on the street, tearing into a pedestrian, and he glances up at you with the hungry eyes of a predator. Witnessing it all, you have no choice but to believe. Leo, I brought Master Hausher, Willow said, her voice timid as she poked her head through the window. Before Leo could answer, the master strode in and plopped down on a meditation cushion. He didn't speak. Leo didn't speak. But Leo had no idea why the master wasn't speaking. Leo, the master is accustomed to starting with something good, so you have to say something first. All right, I'm an idiot. This is a good thing, Master Hausher declared. When you can use such a slanderous term on yourself without hesitation, it proves you've reached a state where you no longer care for the judgment of others. This is true tranquility. The world opinions can no longer bind you. Leo looked at the master, surprised, and finally asked the question that had been bothering him for a while. Master, why do you say everything is a good thing? Because this response is a good thing. When patrons come to me for guidance, they aren't seeking a solution to their problem. They're seeking the courage to get back on their feet when they feel lost. Hasn't anyone ever asked you for an actual solution? Yes. A college student came to me for help with his coding homework. I tapped him on the forehead 3 times. Holy cow, Leo muttered. Was that a secret invitation for a late-night tutoring session? You even know how to code? No, I just really wanted to hit him 3 times to vent my frustration. I still haven't figured out how to link my bank card to my phone, and he's asking me about programming. A faint smile touched Leo's lips, but it was a bitter one. He found it hard to genuinely smile right now. Master, They told me that several of the most important people in my life are just products of my imagination. And what do you think? I can't believe it. But a lot of the evidence points to them not existing. What impact does their existence, or non-existence, have on your future? Of course it has an impact. If I'm not there for Evelyn Shaw, she'll definitely pick a nice day to kill herself. Peyton's career is just starting, and she never got the baby she dreamed of. Without me, God knows what a mess Isabella Vance would make of her life. Her people skills would be a disaster all over again. Leo was getting more and more worked up, but the master raised a hand to stop him. Stop. I asked what impact it has on your life, not theirs. My life? Leo froze. It is both an obsession and a demon of the heart. Since they have passed, you must let them go. Let them go? Leo looked at the innocent, clueless Willow before him. When it came to building a life that was entirely his own, she did seem like the perfect choice. Wait, something wasn't right. Master, why didn't you say this was a good thing? Because it is not a good thing. Master Hausher looked Leo up and down, then stood, shook his head, and walked out. The wind lifted his beard and carried his somber words back into the room. Like a lotus, clean of the pond, like the sun, that owns no sky. Leo didn't understand. He turned a questioning gaze to Willow. She read his expression and answered with difficulty. Something rootless, a grand dream that ends in emptiness. River Bend General Hospital. The 13th floor restroom of the psychiatric ward was packed. Patients passing by saw the crowd and tried to inch closer to see the commotion, but the men in black suits standing guard at the perimeter were as tall as towers, forming an impenetrable wall. They could only whisper among themselves. Did someone kill themselves in there? Maybe it was a murder? In truth, the scene did look like a homicide. A tall man was kneeling in a bizarre posture in front of a sink, the faucet running freely. All it needed was a little blood spatter to complete the picture. A middle-aged man who bore a striking resemblance to the first, only older, was nervously wringing his hands, constantly muttering at the bearded doctor in the white coat next to him. When can you wake my son up? I think it's best not to disturb him just yet. Cold sweat dripped down the bearded doctor's face. The man, Rick Miller, had an oppressive presence. He looked like he was about to tie him up and chop him into pieces. The doctor could only helplessly jot down the kneeling man's dream mutterings in his notebook. But the more he wrote, the weirder it got. Dr. Morris, you haunt me wherever I go, don't you? That idiot Dr. Morris. Dr. Morris, the man holding the pen, was on the verge of tears. What did I ever do to you? Why are you cursing me out? All he'd done was make a cup of tea to start his day when his distant cousin, Summer Lynn, had walked into his office. She'd asked him to run a psychiatric evaluation on Leo later and to, fudge the results a bit. He knew he was a doctor with flexible principles. His cousin was a huge star. The bribe would be substantial. And a psyche eval was highly subjective anyway. It was whatever he said it was. This was easy money. But just as he was about to grin, he heard a commotion outside. Leo had collapsed in the restroom. A collapse was easy to handle. Get him on a gurney and treat him. But when he arrived, he found Leo in a strange state, muttering under his breath. Dr. Morris had been Leo's primary physician before. He knew about the severe head trauma that had caused his amnesia. Waking him up abruptly might not be a good idea. He was still a young doctor. A situation like this called for a consultation. He was currently in the gap, waiting for other doctors to arrive. Dr. Morris felt he had all the patience in the world. But the man beside him, Rick Miller, was clearly running out of it. Is this Dr. Morris, my son, keeps cursing? Rick Miller eyed the bearded man suspiciously. He had a vague recollection that this doctor's last name was, in fact, Morris. Does my son have a grudge against him? I don't know. I'm not familiar. It has nothing to do with me. Despite Dr. Morris's frantic head shaking, Rick turned his suspicious gaze to Summer Lynn. Summer, this doctor's last name is Morris, isn't it? Yes, Uncle Rick. A dangerous glint flashed in Rick's eyes. He slowly uncrossed his arms. Did Chester Miller pay you off? No. Dr. Morris shook his head so hard it was a blur, the sweat on his forehead enough for a shower. The Chester Miller in question, also known as Uncle Chester, was standing not far behind Rick. He watched the scene with a contemptuous smile. Actors. Such great actors. Uncle Chester, isn't Leo's state proof enough that he's mentally ill? Julian asked. It's an act, nothing more. Chester glanced at Leo kneeling by the sink, his eyes filled with 70% admiration and 30% cold disdain. The admiration, of course, was for Leo's performance. Julian, it's a good thing I came with you. Otherwise, you would have been completely fooled by Leo's act. But Uncle, I feel like if we just record this and show at the family meeting, we'll win no matter what. Naive. You think Rick didn't consider that? You think Leo himself didn't consider that? In your opinion, Uncle? They're all fishing, Uncle Chester said, his conclusion based not on guesswork, but on years of experience in family power struggles. And we're the fish. How could Rick Miller possibly leave an opening for them that was this easy to exploit? The easier it seemed, the more Chester felt something was wrong. And this was absurdly easy. They had just discussed the possibility of Leo having a mental illness last night. And this morning, he pulls a stunt like this? Who would believe it? People are always more inclined to trust a truth they had to work for over one that falls into their lap. You have a lot to learn, Julian. You're brilliant, Uncle. Uncle Chester patted his own head, smiling as he watched the farce unfold. Go on, act. It's all for my benefit anyway. If I believe a single word of this, I'll jump off the roof right now. Finally, another doctor arrived, but not one from his hospital. Dr. Shaw, you're finally here, Summer Lynn said, rushing to lead her through the crowd into the restroom. How could he have collapsed so suddenly? Evelyn Shaw was still visibly groggy, clearly having just climbed out of bed. Her face was full of confusion. What were the symptoms? Sudden collapse, plus muttering in his sleep. But why would he collapse so suddenly? As Evelyn asked the question, the sweat on Dr. Morris's brow intensified. A collapse implied a serious problem with Leo's physical functions. Could it be because he didn't sleep at all last night? Summer offered. You should have said so sooner. Evelyn let out a breath of relief and took Dr. Morris's notebook, reading aloud in a low voice. Evelyn Shaw sighed, stepped forward, and cupped Leo's face. Ignoring everyone else, she leaned in and kissed him, a glistening thread connecting their lips. Reciting such blush-inducing lines aloud didn't seem to affect Evelyn's composure in the slightest. In fact, from her perspective, the script wasn't explosive enough. If she were writing it, the scene would have involved her being swept up and placed on the sink before a rough tearing of. But she was in no mood to write fanfiction right now. The further she read, the graver her expression became. She finally met Dr. Morris's eyes, and both of them wore the same serious look. Is this a God's eye view? I think we can wake him up now. As time dragged on, Dr. Morris felt the pressure mounting. As a public hospital doctor, his primary duty was to ensure the patient's safety. Nothing else mattered. But Evelyn Shaw clearly had a more subjective take on the matter. Wait for him to wake up on his own. But we don't even know what state he's in. It's just a simple shallow sleep state caused by autonomic nervous system dysfunction. It's not serious. On what basis can you make such a definitive judgment without an examination? Believe it or not, Evelyn had no intention of wasting her breath on him. The person who would ultimately decide whether to wake Leo was the man standing beside them, Rick Miller. Faced with a medical issue, Rick was hesitant, but persuading him was actually quite simple. Dad, I would never hurt Leo. That's all it took for Evelyn to win him over. I trust you, honey. With one sentence, Rick was settled. He even took a step back, ceding the floor to his daughter-in-law. All Dr. Morris could do was stare, judging by the content of his monologue. It's clear his fantasy began after he went to the restroom to wash his face and turn around to see an apparition of me. Evelyn analyzed, though the notes were incomplete, as Leo only spoke intermittently. Has Leo ever experienced this before? How would I know? Dr. Morris threw up his hands. I wasn't asking you. Evelyn's gaze shifted to Summer Lynn. Before Summer could even answer, she dropped a bigger bombshell. It seems both you and Skylar Reed knew about this. That's why she stepped in to stop the memory recovery, and you deliberately kept your distance from him. Yes, but I don't have time to ask you why right now. Evelyn wore an expression that said I knew it and grabbed Summer's arm, whispering, I just want to know what happened the last time this occurred. A farewell. What farewell? The farewell tour he went on with everyone before the car crash. So there was more to that farewell than we thought. Evelyn sorted through her thoughts, a sudden realization dawning on her. There had been many theories about Leo's behavior before the crash. The lone hero making a final stand, the exhausted soul giving up. But those had all been disproven, because Leo had clearly felt their love before he lost his memory. With this new information, the answer seemed obvious. I recommend we wait for him to wake up on his own. I'm afraid that blindly interfering could cause cognitive impairment. Evelyn had clearly become the one in charge of the restroom. With nothing else to do, everyone could only pull up stools and wait. As time passed, the number of stools grew. Peyton had been there for half an hour, sitting quietly without a word. If it wasn't her area of expertise, she knew to stay quiet. Just being there was enough. After a quick assessment of the situation, she took out her phone and started notifying the people who needed to be notified. Everyone who should be here had to be here. You couldn't underestimate Rick Miller as a father-in-law. He was only meek in front of his son. If one of his daughters-in-law didn't show up at a time like this, he would definitely hold it against them. All he had to do was go home and mention to his wife, "Our boy was sick today, and a certain daughter-in-law didn't even bother to show up, and the mother-in-law would surely hold a grudge." That's all it took for family drama to start. Pete's in sight. She glanced around at Skylar, Summer, Evelyn, and Isabella, who were already there, and whispered to them, "To keep Rick from telling Mom, make sure you check in with her. Send her a text, let her know you're at the hospital with him, and tell her not to worry." The girls reacted differently. Skylar and Summer were whispering about something. Isabella hadn't moved an inch, seemingly contacting doctors in Boston. As for Evelyn, she just shook her phone, indicating she'd already sent the text. In a normal family where the father held all the power, every single one of these wealthy young women would have been deemed unqualified. But this was not a normal family. Peyton pushed the thought from her mind and asked, without lowering her voice, Shaw, what exactly is Leo fantasizing about?" The atmosphere was too heavy. It wasn't a good sign. Since they had to wait anyway, they might as well talk. Based on the notes, the core of it seems to be that we're all fakes. Question marks popped up like items in a bargain bin, thrown her way for free. Even the aloof Isabella turned her head. "We're fakes." Yes, in Leo's mind, we are all products of his imagination. If we're all fake, then who's real? Her. Evelyn pointed toward the entrance, where a figure was just arriving, panting. "Sorry, the Celestial Master Sanctuary is just so far from the city." Willow was still apologizing, though she wasn't sure why. She just felt that the stares directed at her were a bit strange and vaguely hostile. Weird. Aren't I supposed to be the wallpaper? Dressed in a simple robe, Willow shyly entered the restroom, blushing and avoiding everyone's gaze. She tiptoed over to her best friend. "Skylar, what's going on? Why are you the real one? Real or fake what?" Willow looked down at herself, bewildered. After a moment of thought, she seemed to grasp a sliver of the issue and looked at Skylar in disbelief. "Skylar, this is hardly the time to be worrying about something like that. Is there a better time to worry about it? My robe is just a little tight. That's why they look bigger. You can't just say other people are fake because you're a little on the small side." "Willow, is your head filled with water?" "Huh, I haven't had any plastic surgery. I give up." Skylar turned away in frustration, just in time to see Rick Miller walking over. "Willow, you're here." Rick beckoned her over. "Hey, Uncle Rick." To be honest, while Willow seemed like the least important one in this group of women, she was, nominally, the one with the closest relationship to Leo. The established relationships of the other women couldn't be brought out into the light. At the end of the day, Willow was still his fiancée. Now that she was here, Rick naturally had to greet her. "Uncle Rick, after I heard what happened, I went to see Master Hausher first." Wait, is the Master really that psychic? He can even divine Leo's past. The terrifying power of the metaphysical was shattering everyone's worldview, until Evelyn spoke up slowly. "Before Isabella's wedding, I asked Willow to take me to see Master Hausher. I'm the one who told him about Leo's past." "Why would you tell the Master about Leo?" Psychology and Taoist philosophy may seem like two different things, but the world is only so complex. There are just different methods of exploring the same truths. At the time, the Master said Leo was overwrought with anxiety, that his spirit and body were not in harmony, and that he couldn't even sustain meditation. Those are all signs of mental illness. Spirit and body not in harmony. Does that mean his soul is trying to leave his body? Is that even possible? Rick was the first to question the term, which sounded like something straight out of fantasy novel. Apparently, the old dog had read his fair share of them while he was down on his luck. The restroom had turned into a pop-up science lecture, and it fell to Willow to explain. It just means the soul and body are out of sync. Actions are what the body does. Thoughts are what the soul does. When there's too much thinking and too little action, they fall out of sync. This can lead to problems like excessive pessimism and nihilism. As she explained, Willow patted Skylar's shoulder. "That's why the Master said your decision was the right one. Leo doesn't do enough? The things he's done in the past few years are more than most people do in a lifetime. Action that keeps you stuck in one place isn't action. It's just running in circles." Those were the Master's exact words. Willow didn't fully understand it herself. She was just relaying the message. The Master also said something else. Like a lotus, clean of the pond. Like the sun that owns no sky. Something rootless, a grand dream that ends in emptiness. He told us to be mentally prepared, because Leo is about to ascend. Ascend? How are we supposed to interpret that? If he fails to ascend, does he turn into a monster from a video game? Skylar scratched her head. asking the question on everyone's mind. The master said he doesn't know either. He only gleaned it from the experience of his master's master, my grandmaster's ascension. My grandmaster was a venerable old Taoist. After he came out of his secluded meditation to ascend, the first thing he did was yell, "I did it." Then he ran naked around the sanctuary for 3 days, tried to chop down a tree with a mop, claiming it would let him take the place of some mythological figure to see the moon goddess, then drank 3 vats of water and spent half a day pretending to be a fountain. Finally, he called my master over and had him draw a giant turtle on his back. Everyone was trying to stifle their laughter. They didn't dare. They were waiting for Willow's conclusion, but she didn't offer one. "Willow, what's the point? What is ascension?" "Only my master, that idiot, believes in ascension," Willow said, perfectly mimicking Master Hauscher's tone. Anyway, what the master meant is that whether you explain it with secular terms like a mental breakdown, a spiritual leap, or just generalize it as ascension, anything is possible with Leo right now. We all need to be prepared for the worst. And the worst case scenario is he doesn't wake up. "Dad, do you know who Skylar Reed is?" Willow's voice echoed in his ears. Leo groggily opened his eyes and saw Willow sitting by the bed, sending a voice message to her father. "Willow, forget about Skylar. She's nobody. But you mentioned her name several times in your sleep last night. What else did I say? You called out some other names, but you said Evelyn Shaw the most. Probably because she's the clingiest," Leo guessed, not remembering his dream. "No, it's because you said you didn't have to worry too much about the others. I don't have to worry about her either. If you threw her out on the street, the people you should be worried about are the pedestrians and the fire department working overtime." Willow shook her head, not understanding. She simply helped Leo get dressed, saying softly, "You kept repeating one thing to her. Set fewer fires? You have to keep living." Leo froze. Memories were clearly starting to rush back. It was true what they said. You never appreciate what you have until it's gone. "Willow, I still want to believe they exist. I'm willing to believe it, too." "You shouldn't be." Leo stood up and straightened his clothes. "If they didn't exist, you and I might already be married." "Even if they do exist, we're still getting married," Willow said with a shy smile, pulling a small bag of wedding candy from her pocket. "My dad just had this delivered. He wanted to hand it out to my brothers and sisters at the sanctuary." "When did I agree to marry you?" Leo asked, confused. Willow was even more confused. She tilted her head, looking at his face. "Leo, what are we? Fiancés? Then if you're not marrying me, who are you planning to marry?" Leo's first instinct was to say, "Even if I were getting married, it wouldn't be to you." But as the words were about to leave his mouth, he hesitated. "She's right. You're the only one left." "I've always been the only one," Willow said, scratching her head, her socked feet twisting together. "So, Leo, do you want to marry me?" "Why are we getting married again?" "Because of the engagement your grandfather arranged. I was the one who insisted on it back then. Didn't some blue-eyed woman run off with me? You did try to run, but your grandfather caught you and brought you back. I've never seen any blue-eyed woman." "All right." Leo nodded helplessly, not refuting her. He seemed to have completely accepted this version of events. But then he suddenly leaned in and asked loudly, "Answer me in 1 second. Was Ethan's fiancée there at the time?" My cousin-in-law. She was there." "Ha ha. You slipped up. I knew it." Leo let out a triumphant laugh, pacing the room with his hands behind his back. "My little feint exposed the flaw in your story, didn't it? Let me ask you, if Peyton never existed, then how could Ethan have a fiancée?" "My cousin. He doesn't have a wife." Willow answered with difficulty. "Stop trying to cover it up. Get that idiot Dr. Morris out here. This was his treatment plan, wasn't it? Getting everyone to team up and act to deceive me. You're all rotten to the core. Dr. Morris isn't here. Fine, he won't show his face, right? I'll play along with you. Let's see how long you can keep this act up." Leo flashed a confident smile and shot a middle finger at the window. "It's just a wedding, right? I'll do it." The Miller estate. The already enormous courtyard was filled with a grand spectacle. There was no fleet of luxury cars. The procession was led by a single white horse and a sedan chair. Not a single person in the entourage behind them was in a vehicle. This was the mountains. More valuable than any luxury car was the manpower required to carry a sedan chair up the winding roads. Leo sat atop the white horse, a gentle breeze on his face, but his eyes were constantly scanning the crowd. "Act. Keep acting. Are you all really going to just stand there and watch me get married? I'm looking at you, Isabella Vance. If you're not going to crash the wedding now, when are you going to do it? Son, time to get off the horse. Just a little longer. The wedding crashers haven't shown up yet. Who would dare crash this wedding?" Rick Miller, dressed in a sharp suit, scanned the surroundings with wary eyes. "So you're all this patient, huh?" Seeing that no one was making a move, Leo finally dismounted with a sigh and walked toward the main hall. Everything proceeded as expected. A traditional, formal ceremony. Bow to heaven and earth. Bow to the parents. Rick and Diane Miller sat beaming as their son and new daughter-in-law knelt before them. When it came time for the bride and groom to bow to each other, Leo's eyes were like radar, scanning frantically. He refused to believe it. Isabella was going to let him get through the vows? It turned out she was. Not a single familiar face appeared. When the veil was lifted, Willow's handsome face was revealed. She had a striking androgynous beauty. The candlelight flickered in her cool eyes, melting them into the gentle softness of a spring river. But Leo had no time to admire his wife's appearance. "Willow, where's that cousin-in-law you mentioned yesterday?" "Leo, we're getting married. Why are you asking where my cousin-in-law is?" Willow pouted, a hint of jealousy in her voice. "Just point her out to me. I don't know. Why don't you go ask your cousin?" "Don't be ridiculous. Ethan is probably living it up in a men's prison somewhere." "What prison?" "Ethan is right behind you." A strange wave of goosebumps washed over Leo. He spun around and came face to face with an envious-looking Ethan. "Seriously? They let you out just to treat my illness?" Leo circled Ethan curiously, making him squirm. "Cousin, it's my wedding day. What are you doing?" "Wedding day, my ass. Where's Peyton?" "Who's Peyton?" "Stop pretending. Your fiancé." "My fiancé's name isn't Peyton." "Caught you. You have a fiancé, right? Bring her out." "Oh, you should have just said so, cousin. Look behind you. Could you people please stop with the behind you thing?" The goosebumps were back. Leo spun around without even finishing his sentence. A handsome, muscular man was giving him a sunny smile. "Hello, cousin. And you are? You can call me your cousin-in-law if it's easier. Or, if you don't mind the trouble, you can call me your cousin's husband." "What?" Leo's eyes widened as he stared at Ethan and his husband standing together. He mechanically turned his head to look at Ethan's father, Frank Miller, who was watching from the side. The moment their eyes met, Frank quickly looked away. But Leo wasn't letting him off that easily. "Uncle Frank, you're a man of high standing. You're playing along with this game, too. Don't you dare ruin my reputation." "I have no such preferences," Frank said, clearly flustered. "I'm talking about the treatment plan." "I don't know what you're talking about. You're okay with your son bringing a man home. I'm feeling a bit tired. I'm going to bed. You're the worst of them all. Keep pretending." The wedding night. After searching through nearly the entire crowd of guests, a breathless Leo returned to the bridal chamber. He hadn't found a single one of them. He couldn't get a shred of information out of anyone related to them, either. Exhausted, Leo collapsed onto the bed, panting. "Willow, I'm begging you, stop messing with me. Just let them come out." Willow sat silently by the candles. After a long moment, she finally spoke. "Leo, you'd rather believe in people who don't exist than look at me, even once?" Her words made Leo pause. He looked at her back and suddenly felt he was in the wrong. Whether it was a treatment plan or something else, Willow had gone through with marrying him. "Willow, Leo, what is it about them that you're so obsessed with?" "It's hard to say. MMPH. Willow had lifted her own veil and silenced him with a kiss. The unique scent of a young woman, mingled with the lingering smell of incense from the sanctuary, filled his senses. "Leo, I am your bride." Willow breathed heavily, pressing him down onto the bed, her body on top of his. She leaned in, her tongue tracing her lips as she whispered, "At least for tonight, don't think about them. Open your eyes and look at me. You have to listen to me. Oh, sweet mother of God." Leo looked down past Willow's snow-white neck and swallowed hard. Was it possible for someone's skin to be that pale? From her neck down, there was no other color. Not even dark hair, where it should be. "Leo, promise me. I am your bride. Tonight, I am yours, and you will only think of me." "Fine, but repeat what I said." "Willow Shung is my bride. Tonight, you are mine, and I will only look at you." "Willow Shung is my bride. Tonight, you are mine, and I will only look at you." In the restroom, the man knelt before the sink, muttering to himself. But no one was looking at him. All eyes had turned to Willow Shung. Rick Miller heard the words and walked out to have a cigarette without even looking up. Willow's face was as red as an apple. She looked like she wanted the ground to swallow her whole. It was too embarrassing. Willow, Leo's fantasies aren't entirely baseless. They all stem from his own impressions and understanding of certain people. So there's some truth to them, Evelyn said with a teasing smile. "No, that's not it, that's not it." Willow shook her head like a bobblehead. In the bridal chamber, Willow's long legs were wrapped around Leo's waist, the reflection of the red candles dancing in her hazy eyes. She said, "Leo, compared to that Evelyn Shaw you were muttering about all night, you got more stamina than her. She can't really take it." "You got more stamina than her. She can't really." The man kneeling at the sink muttered on. "But still, No one was looking at him. The focus had shifted to Evelyn Shaw. Fortunately, her tolerance was far beyond that of a normal person. She simply rolled her eyes and said nothing. All that talk, and it turns out you're all bark and no bite, huh? Isabella Vance shot her a cold, mocking smile before turning away. She was laughing at all of them. Trash. And how do you compare to Isabella Vance? Her endurance is impressive, sure, but she has one flaw. She loves to put on that grumpy face even when we're doing it, always acting all high and mighty. But she has no idea how loud she screams. Isabella's face was expressionless, but her fists were clenched tight. The red candles flickered, not yet extinguished. On the carved window lattice, paper cuttings of the double happiness symbol were pasted. Moonlight filtered through the silk screen, casting mottled silver spots on the red and gold confetti scattered across the floor. The mirror faintly reflected the double happiness symbol on the wall. The corner of a silk curtain, lifted by the wind, signified the end of an ancient reproductive ritual. Leo slipped out from under the covers, threw on some clothes, and left the room alone. Reality was laid bare before him. To remain fixated on the past would be pure stubbornness. And he was nothing if not stubborn. He had one last resort. His ace in the hole. "Mom, are you asleep?" Leo stood alone by the man-made lake, his hand trembling as he called his mother. "Not yet, son. What's wrong?" "There's something I need to ask you. Is it about the girls?" Faced with his mother's question, Leo hesitated. Deep down, he already knew the answer. His life was likely a mix of truth and fiction. The faded traces of his past might truly be nothing but a phantom. "It's nothing, Mom. Never mind." Leo didn't trust anyone, but he trusted his mom. If she also said they were fake, then he would have no room left to maneuver. So he didn't ask. He looked up at the sky, where the countless stars were so real. "Go to sleep, Mom." "Son, don't overthink it." "I know, Mom. There's still a long life ahead. A long life." Leo sat by the lake, motionless. His first thought was about what to do with his future. His second was about that very sentence. No matter how you live, you still have to live. He stared at the shimmering water. Could he jump in right now and end it all? Honestly, no. He couldn't, which meant he had to live. But how? Since you're married, you should go work at the company like a respectable man. Put in 3 or 5 years of hard work. What about school? You're still thinking about school? You think you're still a kid? You've got 2 jobs now. The company during the day, the lounge at night. Where are you going to find time for school? If anyone else had said this, Leo would have scoffed. But these were Silas's words. He had attended the wedding and decided to stay the night at the Miller estate. A man has 2 guides in life, a kind father and a strict teacher. His father wasn't exactly kind, but Silas was a decent enough teacher. Is this my life script? Leo scratched his head. He found that the script wasn't unfamiliar. Even if they had existed, he probably would have chosen this path anyway. After all, crashing the car and walking into the lounge were his own choices. Is this destiny? A vague concept of destiny began to form in Leo's mind. The combined force of his family background, his upbringing, his personality, it had all built a rough framework for his fate long ago. Stop going on about them. They're just a bunch of fantasies. Now that you're awake, focus on your career and live your life. I know, old man. Leo started his job at the Miller Group. His first position was as an intern in the Human Resources Department. With no formal work experience and not even a bachelor's degree, he had to start by learning the company structure. There were no cliché scenes of underlings failing to recognize the air, no beautiful women throwing themselves at him. It was just quiet, uneventful work. Leo's team lead simply assigned him tasks and gave him company materials to review. He sat in the office all day, occasionally getting up for a cup of tea from the break room. It was an utterly ordinary day, but Leo didn't mind. It was all new to him, and when faced with an unfamiliar field, Leo lacked his usual confidence. He dutifully clocked out, waved goodbye to his colleagues, and got into his Lamborghini to drive home to his villa in the gated community. The car was a gift from his father-in-law. The house was a Miller family asset. A simple, unadorned life. The moment he pushed the door open, 2 or 3 small cats came bounding over, their heads turning in unison to look at him. Willow, a new wife, emerged from the kitchen, dressed in loungewear. Her stern face was softened with a gentle warmth. "You're home from work. What's for dinner?" "I learned how to make braised ribs from your mom. I'm planning to learn how to make Buddha jumps over the wall next." "You're not going to sanctuary anymore." Leo draped his coat over the sofa and looked up at her, puzzled. "You should keep up with your training if you want to, but I'm your wife now. These are the things a wife is supposed to do." Her words made sense, but Leo felt a strange sense of unease. "Willow, what I mean is if you don't like doing these things, you don't have to. But I do like it." "All right." Leo nodded, offering an apologetic smile. He wasn't used to this kind of polite, formal interaction between a husband and wife. But that was okay. He could learn. Leo, my family was urging us to put having a baby on the agenda today. But we've only been married for a day. It's not just my mom. Your mom mentioned it in a text today, too. Let's not for now. On second thought, the ideas of marriage and children had always made Leo a little resistant. But life didn't offer that many choices. He had absent-mindedly agreed to the wedding yesterday. Now that he was married, having kids seemed like an inevitable next step. And for him, it was a decision with all pros and no cons. At that thought, Leo leaned back on the sofa, silent. He had always thought his life was extraordinary. But now he realized that once the illusions were stripped away, his life was no different from most people's. So this was my original script. It had been a long time since they had appeared. Leo was starting to forget them. He began to treat the past as a dream and settled into a repetitive life. Until his birthday arrived. It was a grand and solemn affair. The Miller family threw him a lavish birthday banquet, inviting guests from all over. His wife, Willow, placed a party hat on his head. Leo looked around the crowd blankly, forcing a smile in response to their well wishes. He blew out the candles and made a wish. Someone in the crowd yelled jokingly, "What did you wish for, Mr. Miller?" "For my family to be safe and sound, and for the Miller Group to prosper." Leo didn't care about the superstition that a wish wouldn't come true if you said it aloud. Reeking of alcohol, he loosened his tie, raised his glass, and toasted the crowd. He drank too much that night. He was miserable. It turned out he probably had no business acumen. He couldn't seem to handle a real job. Leo didn't have a prince-in-waiting mentality, either. If he was going to learn something properly, he couldn't pull rank. He had approached the job with the mindset of a fresh college graduate. The result, naturally, was that he was getting his ass kicked. "Leo, your colleagues say you're usually very quiet at the office. I haven't felt much like talking lately. Is something on your mind?" Seeing that Leo wasn't answering, Willow changed the subject. "Leo, I got you a birthday present." "What is it?" "A house." The car stopped in front of an old apartment building. Willow got out of the driver's seat and led him to a rundown unit. The place was completely unfamiliar to him. He had no idea where he was. Until Willow started unlocking the door and said, "Your uncle told me about this place. He said you lived here for a while." "I lived here. It was after you took care of Roy Gannon." "Huh." Leo suddenly realized where he was. Not because of what Willow said, but because of the figure that rose from the sofa in the dim light. A woman was making hot pot. "You're here, Leo." A beautiful voice wrapped around him like a morning lark in a mountain valley. "Happy birthday." The apartment was old, the windows rattling in the wind. Summer Lynn stood by the table, waving, and ran over to take his hand, leading him through the room. The magnets on the fridge were here before. There's still a bunch of trash bags in the cabinet. "Summer, I'm hallucinating again, aren't I?" Summer acted as if she hadn't heard him. She pulled him back to the coffee table and took a small cake out from a hidden compartment, placing it on the table. "Leo, you seem to have lost your confidence." "How was that possible?" "Leo, you look just as dejected now as you did when you left Roy Gannon's place. Are you blaming yourself for not being able to do things well?" "I really didn't do well. But you have to look on the bright side. Even though Roy screwed you over when you were just starting out, you had the guts to blow up his place. That at least proves you're brave." Summer looked at him, her eyes crinkling with a smile. She said, "Leo, will you make a wish with me?" "What wish?" "To always stand in the sunlight and praise yourself, loud and without shame." In the hospital restroom, Summer Lynn heard the familiar words, and tears began to stream down her face. Perhaps it was the memory of the past, or the bittersweet taste of all the little moments. She just turned her head and looked at Willow. "Willow, is there really a way to turn back time?" Chapter 467. Leo felt he needed to rally. He had come to terms with it. His corporate job was a marathon, not a sprint. He just had to study hard during the day and go to the lounge at night to get his confidence back. "This is my comfort zone," Leo declared, lounging across the front desk, taking over Jenny's spot. He forced her to sit on a small stool in the corner, pouting. "Boss, you won't bring in any money sitting at the front desk. That's what the lucky cat is for. I don't need you. What kind of boss steals the receptionist's seat? Don't you know how awkward my position is? I'm not a host who needs to go on the clock, and that old bastard Silas won't give up his spot on the second floor. Then why don't you be a host for a bit? Generate some revenue for the lounge. Are you implying your boss is lazy? I'm docking you 200. Leo, you spent all that time at the company and didn't learn a single useful thing, except how to dock your employees' pay. How else am I supposed to be a capitalist?" Leo leaned back in a large chair, bored again. "Jenny, you think a client will walk in and request me?" Let me give her a little shock and awe. There is one, Jenny said, pointing toward the door. It was a girl with a small snaggletooth that showed when she smiled. Her name was Stella, a new client. Ever since she'd seen Leo at the lounge, she'd been chasing after him. Finally caught you. You can't catch me because I'm clocking out. Leo stood up, grabbed his coat, and tried to leave, but Jenny grabbed him from the corner. You just said you wanted a client. Why are you leaving now? She's here for love. Isn't love money the easiest to get? But it's boring. While Leo and Jenny were whispering, Stella had already dashed to the counter and grabbed his arm excitedly. I like you the moment I saw you. I like you too, beautiful. Leo always wore a smile for his clients. Then why are you avoiding me? Because you're too dazzling. That's so cheesy, Stella said, but her eyes were sparkling. She pulled a bank card from her purse and placed it on the table. However much you need to hit your quota this month, I'll cover it. You'll spend the rest of the month with me. Perhaps the old Leo would have jumped for joy at those words. But now, his face was a mask of utter boredom. He had been in this line of work for too long. He could already see Stella's entire story arc playing out. From the initial whim to lavish spending, then from love to hate, and finally to a bitter end. It was always the same. It was the nature of the job. Leo could even build a predictive model of a client's emotional journey based on the countless examples he'd seen. But he didn't need the money anymore. He didn't need to keep playing this tedious game. Leo, Jenny whispered, why do you emotionally experienced guys always sigh so heavily when you see an eager girl like that? Because the faster it comes, the faster it goes. Leo quietly walked toward the door, brushing past a woman with blue eyes. He paused and looked back. She paused and looked back at him. Two familiar faces staring at each other. Leo was suddenly reminded of a rainy night. This blue-eyed woman had walked in, her face cold, and looked at him. A male host, pessimistic about love because of his job. A sad woman, emotionally detached. Two emotionally detached people brought together, enemies and star-crossed lovers. Isabella Vance. Do you know why they say it's lonely at the top? Because once you've defeated all your rivals, you realize that life without an enemy is unbearable. Leo turned and walked out, strolling down the alley without a hint of reluctance. He stopped at the end of a ukiyo-painted wall. The warm yellow light of the lounge filled his vision, but he was trying to find a pair of blue eyes in the distance. Isabella, without you, I'm lonely too. In the restroom, Isabella Vance's clenched fist slowly relaxed, then tightened again. What does he mean by that? What without me? Did he break up with me in his dream? Took you long enough to get there, Evelyn said, crossing her arms and studying Isabella's face. You're not even real. How can you talk about breaking up? So what if I'm not real? I've seen movies where people fall in love with AI girlfriends. It's still wrong for him to break up with me. It's a crime. You're fake. He can't see you or touch you. You expect him to spend the rest of his life fantasizing about you and taking care of himself. Why not? That's what I did when he wasn't around. Sensing the confused stares focused on her, Isabella abruptly shut her mouth, realizing the absurd thing she had just said. But it was too late.